All right, you're good to go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's Sarah Vanderpass with the Coverdale team at Keller Williams. And again, with me is Lincoln Coverdale. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our topic is going to be making an offer. If you joined us last week, we went over looking at homes. And for the remaining 2 weeks, we're going to continue to break down the rest of the home buying process. We hope you'll find this series helpful as you embark on your exciting journey of finding your dream home. As we go through today's topics, please feel free to ask questions in chat and address them at the end. We will post contact information in the chat as well. Today's topics that we're going to be going over are price, terms, and conditions, making it a win-win, negotiating tactics, earnest money, picking a title company, and your timeline. Once you have found the home that you wish to purchase, you'll need to determine what offer you're willing to make for the home. It is important to remember that the more competition there is for the house, the higher the offer should be, sometimes exceeding the asking price. The offer to purchase or contract constitutes your bid to buy a home. Once accepted by the seller, your offer becomes a valid legal contract, so it is important to understand what is written on the offer to purchase. To make an offer, your agent will need your name, earnest money, deposit amount, inclusions and exclusions, purchase price, terms, title, insurance policy, date for closing and possession, along with your signatures. So what does an offer to purchase a home contain?
So that's a great question. Your offer is a formal letter of intent to purchase the home using the price, terms, and conditions of your choice. So it's a standard way to get all those things written down and in place so that you can communicate them clearly with the seller's agent and then the sellers so they understand your offer and what you're asking for.
How do I know how much to offer?
Well, that's a great question. A house is only worth what you're willing to pay for it. And what you're willing to pay for it depends on a couple of factors. Number one, your agent should be educating you on how much homes in the area are selling for. You should be aware of and educated about comparable sales and understand what a particular market or neighborhood supports price point wise. Once you have that number, that'll give you a range of about what you want to offer. You take into consideration the condition of the home, any necessary repairs, updates that have already been made, and figure out where you're comfortable. It's also not a bad idea to talk to your mortgage lender and ask what different payments might be on a monthly basis based on different purchase prices, so you understand where you want to be and what you're most comfortable with. But at the end of the day, any offer is a good offer, and you should only make an offer that you're comfortable with.
Great. Can I get a better deal if I pay all cash?
That's a bit of an urban legend. Cash doesn't really save anyone any money. You can potentially close a deal faster if you're paying cash. And if closing the deal faster stops the seller from having to make an additional mortgage payment, there could be a small savings for them. But in general, cash doesn't help the seller. There are situations where a home may not appraise if a home needs a lot of work or is a fixer-upper that you may have to pay cash because you have to get a loan. But in general, you don't get a better deal for paying cash for a home.
What if I want something that's not included in the purchase? Example, couch, outdoor furniture, something like that.
Sure. So in the real estate world, that's called chattel, and that's non-house stuff. So anything that's not the roof, windows, walls, floors, that kind of stuff, things that you would put in a house or in a garage are all chattel. They're all personal possessions. You can certainly negotiate that in the deal, but you want to be careful not to include that in the appraised value of the home in consideration for your loan. Most lenders won't value a couch against the loan they're giving you for the house. So if you're interested in purchasing some of the personal effects or belongings in the home, you may want to negotiate that outside the deal on a separate addendum, and you can pay the seller's cash for that or write them a check or Venmo or any other way you want to get them payment. But generally speaking, you want to keep that stuff out of the purchase agreement.
How can I make my offer stand out in a multiple offer situation?
That's an interesting question. We have a lot of multiple offers right now. Our market has a significant inventory shortage, meaning we don't have enough homes for people to buy. And so the homes that are available are oftentimes receiving multiple offers. So when you make an offer, if you think you're going to be a multiple, there are a couple things you can do. First, you can offer an escalation clause. An escalation clause allows your purchase price to increase based on competitive offers. So as an example, you can make an offer for a house for $150,000 and include an escalation clause that makes your offer go up to $165,000, but only if there's a competitive offer. In that way, you don't have to negotiate and go back and forth, but you're showing a willingness to pay more for the house. You don't necessarily have to start at asking price. You can start below and escalate to asking price, or you can escalate above asking price. That's up for you and your agent to decide, but you want to present a strong offer. Other things you can do include putting down a larger down payment on your loan or increasing your earnest funds. If you show that you're a well-qualified buyer that is able to purchase the home and the seller can be confident that if they accept your offer, the home is going to sell, they're more likely to accept your offer.
If we saw things at the home that we know we want repaired or fixed, should we wait to address them at the inspections?
So typically, no. Your offer should be based on the condition of the home as best you know it at the time. So as an example, if you go see a home and you know that the deck out back needs a lot of repair work, maybe it needs new deck boards or needs to be rebuilt, it's falling down, something like that, your offer should take into consideration the condition of that deck. It is bad form to go back to the seller and negotiate something that you already knew was a problem ahead of time. The seller oftentimes feels like they're getting nickel and dimed. You also can ask the seller to make repairs or to provide a credit so that you can make repairs for the known items at the time of the offer. So in the deck example, you could ask the seller to perform repairs on the deck before closing, or you could ask them to provide you a credit so that you could pay for the repairs after close.
Are there terms or conditions that are typically dictated by the seller or buyer in our market?
So there are a couple. Typically, when you make an offer, the buyer picks the title company. Now, there's no hard and fast rules, and that doesn't mean that the seller can't request to use a different title company. Oftentimes, people find it advantageous to use the same title company when they buy and sell a home, so they're meeting with the same people and signing the paperwork at the same time. So if you can accommodate the seller or your situation by using a specific title company, that's a great idea. It's also another way to make your offer stand out is to help the seller out. Other than that, most things are decided back and forth. It is typical in our market, if you're in a city that has point of sale, that most homes are made point of sale compliant by the seller prior to title transfer. So it is normal for that language to be included by a buyer when they make an offer, requesting that the seller provides a compliant point of sale inspection report valid through title transfer.
What if we have something that is really important to us, like the move-in date?
Well, when you negotiate the terms and the conditions and the price, you want to make sure that you're negotiating what's important to you. The price may not be the only factor that you want to negotiate on. We help a lot of people who are leasing currently and have a lease contract through the end of the year or the next several months, and the move-in date might be really important to them. If you're negotiating really hard on one of the terms or conditions, you may need to be more flexible on the price. It really is a balancing act between getting a good price, good terms, and good conditions and making it work for everybody.
So a good home purchase does not have a winner and a loser. A deal is beneficial for all parties involved and maintains the trust and communication between parties. How do you make the purchase of a home a win-win?
So that's one of the biggest things that your agent should be helping you with. You need to understand your side of the deal and also what's important to the seller. In the example we just discussed, perhaps your move-in dates are really important to you and you want to move in later or you're looking for an extended close. If you're asking for a concession or something unusual, then you may want to offer the seller something in return. Maybe you negotiate a better price. Maybe you negotiate a later close. But it's also a good idea to have your agent reach out to the seller's agent and ask them if there's anything specific they're looking for. In our market in Northeast Ohio, a lot of our homes sell based on the school year schedule, meaning most families don't like to move in the middle of the school year and disrupt the school cycle. So if you know that a family wants to move out of a home in the summer when the kids aren't in school, accommodating those dates might help the seller accept your offer, and that makes it a win-win. You get the house you want and they don't have to move in the middle of the school year. So finding common ground, negotiating the terms, conditions, and price that are important to you while also making it beneficial for the seller is a great way to make it a win-win, and oftentimes will buy you goodwill in the deal and get you more concessions or repairs or consideration later on if things come up that weren't known at the initial offer.
Will a personal letter to the seller help my offer?
It's always a good idea. If you feel strongly that the house spoke to you and that you really enjoy the house, or there are features that are important to you that make it unique, it's a great idea to include a letter to the seller. Sellers love to feel like their home's going to be loved and lived in just like they did. They want to feel like they're giving their home to someone who's going to care for it just as much as they did the whole time they lived there. So if you can make that personal connection and you feel comfortable doing that, absolutely, that's a great idea.
To communicate your interest in purchasing a home, your agent will present the listing agent with a written offer to purchase. After it has been presented, it can be accepted, rejected, or the seller can make a counteroffer. This is when we will negotiate the price, terms, and conditions of the contract if necessary. What happens if they reject my offer?
Well, there are a number of things that could happen. In the example we talked about earlier, you might be in multiple offers. You might be in a situation where they accepted a different offer. If that's the case, your negotiations may be over and it may be time to look for another home. If they just outright reject your offer, you can always change your offer and resubmit it. Legally, in the state of Ohio, a licensed agent is required to present all offers sent to them for any home they have listed for sale. So if you make an offer and the seller decides not to accept it and doesn't counter your offer, you can amend or change, update your offer, change the terms, condition, or price, and submit it back. You may want to consider having your agent reach out to their agent and try to get some information as to why they didn't accept the offer. Maybe the price was too low. Maybe the timeline didn't work. Maybe there were too many concessions. But trying to understand the seller's expectations might help you submit a second offer that could get accepted.
Do I have to accept the counteroffer?
No, you don't. Whenever there is contract negotiations, there are always three options. You can accept the terms that were presented to you. You can counter those terms, changing them, updating them, or amending them, or you can reject the terms and be done negotiating. But in any case, you can counter any offer that you receive.
What types of things can I negotiate for?
Well, the three things we discussed above. The price, the terms, and the conditions are all things that you can negotiate. Oftentimes, if you get to a sticking point in negotiations on, let's say, price, maybe it's time to talk about the terms. If you can accommodate the seller's timeline, or maybe not ask for a home warranty, or maybe accept the house as is without inspections. We've seen several homes recently that had home inspections completed prior to offers being accepted, and you may be able to review those inspections and accept the home without your own inspection contingency, which will allow the seller to feel more confident that you're going to purchase the home and not negotiate more later. So it's always a good idea to look at other opportunities to negotiate and find the right way to get to the solution.
How many times can I negotiate an offer?
As long as it takes. It is typical in our market that when you negotiate an offer, you're probably going to go back and forth between buyer and seller 3, 4, or 5 times. That's very normal. But it can take a lot more than that, or they might accept your offer the very first time. But don't think that negotiating is a bad sign. All it means is that the parties involved are working towards resolution and finding the right contract to get the deal done.
All right, so what is earnest money?
Earnest money is also known as skin in the game. It's money that a buyer puts down when the contract is accepted to establish their seriousness about buying a home. If you were looking to purchase a $400,000 home and you were only willing to put $500 down stating that you're willing to buy the home, most sellers wouldn't think you were very serious. So in our market, we expect buyers to put down anywhere from 2 to 5% of the purchase value. So if you were buying a $400,000 home, you should expect to put about $8,000, maybe $10,000 down in earnest money. That money is collected and held by either the listing broker, the buying broker, or the title company at the beginning of the deal, and is credited back to the buyer at closing as towards their down payment, closing fees, or costs.
Great. So do I get the earnest money back if I don't proceed with the sale?
You should. If you exit the contract legally, meaning if you found a problem with the home or the negotiations fell apart and you were unable to proceed with the purchase, you should receive your earnest funds back. The earnest funds are designed to protect the seller, and as I said before, show that you're serious about buying the home. They're designed to protect the seller so that at the last minute, maybe the week before close, a buyer doesn't decide to find a new home and leave them high and dry with their home off the market for a month or two. So as long as you proceed with the purchase and you follow your contract and you stay within your deadlines, you should get your earnest money back. In the state of Ohio, if the parties can't agree on who gets the earnest money back, it's held by the title company until either a court order releases the funds, or after 2 years, the funds are automatically returned to the buyer.
So can I write a check or pay cash?
You can definitely write a check. Wires are another great idea too. Most title companies and brokerages do not accept cash. So you're going to want to have those funds available and either have a cashier's check, a personal check, or you can get wiring instructions for most brokerages and title companies to receive the funds.
What is a title company and how do I pick one?
So a title company is a disinterested third party whose only job is to execute the contract that you and the seller have agreed upon. So once you come to terms and your contract is executed, your agent will send your contract to your title company. Their job is to read through the contract and make sure that all the terms and conditions are met and the house transfers to you under the agreed upon terms. Title companies, there are a bunch in the area. Typically, your agent will have a working relationship with several title companies and be able to make a recommendation. Most of their fees are regulated and they can't charge you a lot more than any company in the area. So you're not going to save a lot of money going back and forth. So finding a reputable company that has been in business and closes a lot of deals in your area is a great way to make sure your deal closes smoothly.
Do I have to go to the title company to sign my paperwork?
You can, but you don't have to. Most title companies employ notaries and they will send a notary to your home with your paperwork to sign for you to buy your new home. Typically, they'll reach out to you the week before close and schedule a time a couple of days before title transfer to send someone out to sign all the paperwork. That person will come out and they'll check your ID. Typically, you're going to need 2 forms of ID, so a driver's license and a passport or some other photo identification to make sure they know who you are. They'll bring you the paperwork, you'll sign it, they'll notarize it, take it back, and the title company will file it and you'll get your new home.
Can I bring a check to the closing?
You might be able to. Under recent Ohio law changes, if your total to close the deal, your down payment, your closing costs, any fees, if that's more than $15,000, you have to wire those funds to the title company directly. They can no longer receive checks. So your title company should be in communication with you from the beginning of the deal, and they should be able to alert you if you're going to need to wire the funds. A lot of times for our clients, we have the earnest money held by the title company so that the buyer sets up the wire instructions at the beginning of the deal and sends the earnest money and then just repeats the process at the end, sending their total amount for closing directly to the title company so they can close quickly.
So why is the timeline so important?
The timeline is what protects both the buyer and the seller. In the contract, within the terms, there's going to be a lot of dates about when you have the right to do inspections, when you need to apply for your loan, when you need to have loan approval, when you need to have the appraisal done and stuff like that. The contract dates and the timeline are critical to make sure that everyone is safe and protected within the deal. It stops any one party from doing something that might put the other party at risk. Namely, it keeps the deal moving and it allows us to have milestones for buyers and sellers to meet so that we know and can be confident the deal is going to close in the agreed upon amount of time and under the agreed upon terms.
So what is the timeline from offer to close?
Well, it varies by deal. A typical close in our area is about 40 to 45 days. Most conventional lending institutions can't process a loan faster than about 35 or 40 days. And so we give most deals 40 to 45 days to close to make sure that you can get all your funding in order and make sure everything's ready to go. It is also acceptable to negotiate a faster close. If your lender can close more quickly, and I would confirm with them directly, you can close in as little as 2 or 3 weeks. You asked earlier about paying cash for a home. Most title companies can get the title work done in 10 to 14 days for a cash deal, so you could close more quickly. If you are accommodating somebody's timeline, you might also close in 65 or 70 days or even 90 days, allowing parties to move into their new homes, get set up, or end up in the middle of the school year. So there's no right answer, but typically you should expect your deal to take about 45 days to close.
So what happens if there's a delay in the timeline or if a deadline is missed?
Well, your agent should be keeping track of all the timeline related deadlines. So they should be alerting you if you need to get stuff done. They should be working with you and your lender and your title company and your insurance provider to make sure that all the documents are in place. If a deadline is forthcoming and you're not going to be able to make it, you should be asking for an extension, either by the buyer or the seller. So if the seller agreed to make repairs to the home and there have been delays because the contractor wasn't available or bad weather or other issues like that, you want to be ahead of that curve. You want to make sure that before you're out of contract, before you miss a deadline, you've reached out and you've put a formal extension in place. Both parties have agreed and signed the extension, protecting everyone and allowing you to continue with the deal. If a deadline is really missed and a contractual date is not met, you are technically out of contract. The party that did not meet that deadline is in breach of contract, and that can have ramifications on the release of earnest funds, the ability to continue purchasing the home, and opens up the contract for negotiation again if one of the parties decides to. So really the best practice is to stay on top of the date, stay ahead of them. If for any reason you're unable to make them, put a formal extension in place, protect yourself, communicate through your agent to the seller's agent or to the buyer's agent, and get all the parties on board and keep the deal together.
Okay, so after I've signed my paperwork, when do I get my new keys to my new home?
Well, everything has to file and process. So when the title company sends a representative out to you and you sign all the paperwork, the deal's not done yet. That paperwork has to be taken in, has to be reviewed by the title company and submitted to the county so that the title for the property transfers to your name. That process can take anywhere from a day to 2 days. With the recent isolation quarantine standards, the county has been accepting paperwork differently, and the process used to take a couple of hours and now can take a day or two. So you want to make sure that you're aware when you sign paperwork that you're not getting keys right then. It may be a couple of days, and it should be outlined in your contract when you get possession of your new home. Typically, it's within a day or two of signing your paperwork, and typically it's between 3 and 5 p.m. in the afternoon, but can be any time written into the contract.
Great. Well, thank you. That's all we've got for tonight. If you've got any questions, please reach out. Anybody going on? While you're looking, join us next Wednesday, June 17th at 5:30 p.m. We'll be discussing home inspections with PRC Ohio. And if you'd like a copy of our home buyer's guide, leave your email in the chat or reach out to us. Anything?